This is Build Without Chaos. I'm Colleen Goepfert. One clear idea every episode for operators, founders, and marketers who build with intent. Hi, welcome back to Build Without Chaos. So I just recorded a conversation with Danny Speros, and it aired last month. It was a very interesting conversation, and if you listen to it in full, you'll see towards the end I have an aha moment about leadership with him. And one thing stood out immediately to me, and that was in high growth companies, we're still promoting people based on performance, not leadership capabilities. And on the surface, that sounds completely reasonable. If someone is doing a great job, you reward them, you give them responsibility, you move them up in your org. But when you actually follow that pattern through an organization, it explains a lot of what ends up creating chaos. Let me explain. What happens is pretty straightforward. Someone performs well in their role, they hit their number, they move fast in the culture, they operate well under pressure, so they get promoted. Now they're responsible for people in a team, but they were never actually trained to lead. And the company doesn't slow down to support them because the company itself is moving at a high level of urgency. So now you have someone in a leadership role trying to manage a team under pressure, without structure, without real training, and without a clear model for what good leadership actually looks like. And at that point, people start managing the only way they know how. This is where things start to compound. You get inconsistent management styles across the teams. You get unclear expectations. You get pressure without support. You get teams operating in a constant state of urgency where everything feels important, but nothing is actually prioritized well. And from the outside, the company can still look like it's performing, but internally, things start to feel off. This is how chaos gets normalized. Not because people are doing the wrong thing, but because the system is reinforcing the wrong signals. And one thing I've personally seen consistent across these environments is that the support structure is reactive, not developmental. HR tends to show up when something is already going wrong, like a performance issue, a conflict, a termination. But there's very little built into the system that supports managers before they get to that point. So a lot of managers are left to figure it out on their own, not because they don't want to help, but because asking for help can feel like it reflects on their capabilities. So instead of having structured feedback loops or real coaching, you end up with a group of people all managing in slightly different ways under pressure without a consistent standard. And over time, that shapes the entire operating culture of a company. And this is where I think Brian Klass's work becomes really relevant. He talks about how systems often misread outcomes. We look at success and assume it's the result of skill, intention, or strong leadership. But in reality, a lot of outcomes are driven by timing, structure, and sometimes just being in the right place in a chaotic environment. And when you apply that to high growth tech, you start to see the pattern. Someone succeeds in a chaotic system, and we label them a high performer. Then we promote them, assuming that performance will translate into leadership. But those are two completely different skill sets. So the system keeps reinforcing the same assumption over and over again. Now layer in an urgency culture. There's no time to train. There's no time for real feedback loops. There's no time to step back and build a structure. Everything is about speed, output, and execution. So the system keeps promoting, keeps moving fast, and keeps reinforcing the same patterns. And over time, that doesn't just impact individual teams. It creates an environment where misalignment, burnout, and turnover become part of the operating model. If you actually want to build without chaos, you have to change what gets rewarded. You have to move away from speed and output and move towards clarity, decision quality, people development, and sustainable performance. Because performance in one role doesn't automatically mean someone is equipped to lead. One thing that came up in my conversation with Danny is how AI might actually start to support this gap, not by replacing managers, but by helping with training, feedback loops, consistency in how people are managed in a culture. If used correctly, AI could actually help companies build more structure into how leadership develops, especially in environments that move too fast to do that manually. At the end of the day, chaos in organizations doesn't come from bad people. It comes from systems that reward the wrong things and move too fast to correct them. And until that changes, we're going to keep seeing the same patterns play out. Those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next episode.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Build Without Chaos. If today's episode resonated, subscribe and share it with someone else who's building without chaos.